What is up, Houston Illini? Welcome to the 3-in-1 show. On this show, we interview and feature a variety of University of Illinois alumni who are now thriving right here in a place they call home, Houston, Texas. My name is Brian Crawford. I'm a graduate of Illinois in 2008. And today, our featured guest here is David Catalano, Senior Business Analyst at McKinsey Company. Say what's up, David.
Hey, how's everyone doing?
All right, real quickly before we get started, this is just a reminder on how this works. If you attended any Illini sporting events, you might remember the halftime performance by the Marching Illini. It's broken down into 3 distinct parts, including the alma mater, Hail to the Orange. But okay, since we hope people are watching this show during a break in their week, we're also going to try to break up our interview into 3 distinct parts as well. First, we want to talk to our guest about how they got to the University of Illinois, and second, what was their experience like when they were there, and finally, what is life like now in Houston? So if you're watching, drop us a question, but really no matter how you're watching, please and most importantly, subscribe and follow. Make sure you don't miss any interviews coming up, and please let us know how you're doing. If you know someone who would be a great interview on the show, let us know. So without further ado, welcome David Catalano.
Thanks, Brian. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. What's been going on in your world?
Not much. Just been kind of working hard, closing out the year here. Really excited and looking forward to the holidays. So, happy to be kind of getting to that slowdown here at the end of December. So,
absolutely, man. But really, before we get really started into the questions, I heard that you guys have a pretty big announcement.
Yeah, my wife, Nora, and I were expecting a little girl next month. So it'll be our second kid. We have an almost 2-year-old boy. So really looking forward to adding another little one. She's due kind of end of January. So we're kind of entering those final weeks. And my wife's more than ready to be done with this pregnancy. So.
Well, so much congratulations. Our little boy, Brooks, is... let's see, this is 11 weeks.
Wow.
But if you're due in January, they will be in the same graduating class from the University of Illinois.
That's right.
In 22 years from now, I guess.
Yeah. I know with our son, he was born in 2022. And 2022, and his graduating class for high school is 2040, which blew my mind. So Illinois graduate 2044. So I think your son and our second kid will be 2046 or so, something around there for high school.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
man, what is tuition going to cost by then?
I don't even want to think about it.
All right, so let's get into some of the questions, and I wanted to start off. Section 1 of the show is, how did you get to the University of Illinois? In the pre-show, you told me you guys moved around a lot, and you graduated from Clements High School right here in Sugar Land.
Yes.
But tell me about where all you bounced around growing up.
Yeah. So when I was a kid, I'm the youngest of 2. So we had a family of 4, and my mom's career working for Amoco and then BP kind of took us around different places. So we actually moved to Beijing, China when I was 3 months old. We were there for a little bit. Don't remember it, obviously. Came back to the States around the Chicago area, and then did a short stint in Atlanta, and then moved to London in the UK, where we spent about 5 years. Then came back to the States, did a year in Florida, and then finally got to Sugar Land, where I went to middle school and high school, and just loved Sugar Land. So really had a great first experience with Houston, and went away for college, obviously, and then came back. So really happy to be a Houstonian.
Oh wow, you really did move around a lot. We didn't even get into all the locations.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was good though, because when you're a kid, you kind of just do whatever's going on and you don't really think much of it. But it, taught my sister and I a lot of really great things about how to be comfortable in different situations, meet new people, make friends, things like that. So it was a really great experience.
What was there any particular place that you enjoyed more so than any of the other ones?
Yeah. So London was the first place where I kind of came into consciousness. We moved there when I was 4, and it was definitely the longest we stayed anywhere, being there for 5 years. So that's kind of where I think of as being childhood home. So a lot of my earliest memories, formative years, are all spent in London, and it's a pretty cool city. There's lots to do, lots of things to see, and so that's definitely probably my favorite place from childhood that I got to live.
No, that's crazy cool to get to experience some different cultures like that.
Yeah, no, we were super fortunate. It was really, really great experience.
Okay, so you're a second generation Illini, from what I
Yes,
understand. So I guess you had some ties to Champaign. So talk to
I
me about
did.
a little about that.
Yeah, so it was, fun. Both my parents went to Illinois. They actually met at Taft Van Dorn Residence Hall. They were both RAs of different dorm halls, but they met there at Taft Van Dorn. And growing up, they really spoke fondly of the university, and they obviously had a great time at Illinois and met each other there. Had a lot of great friends there. That being said, as I was kind of getting older and going through middle school and high school, and started thinking more about college and things like that, they really did a good job of like not pressuring me towards Illinois. They were always very positive about it, but they were not, like, hey, you have to go here. My older sister went to KU in Kansas, so she wasn't influenced by it. Yeah, no, I agree. But I took a visit my sophomore year of high school to Illinois with my mom. She was doing a speaking thing at the business school there, and just absolutely fell in love with the campus. At the time, I was super involved in music and singing already in high school, and so I was interested and met with some of the professors at the music school at Illinois, and again was blown away. So really just left an awesome first impression on me. And I would never forget kind of that first time you step onto the quad and you see it all open up, and it was just a really, really great experience. So that definitely stuck with me as I was thinking about where to go.
It must not have been cold then at that time.
It wasn't cold, but it wasn't warm. It was during spring break of
Okay.
sophomore year, so it was still pretty chilly, but not too bad. Definitely not like you get in January and February and things like that, but it was still pretty chilly. But again, I don't know. It's a great campus. The energy was really good. The students all looked really happy, which was not the case at some of the other schools I visited. So, that was definitely something that left an impression on me too.
Okay. So speaking of other campuses here,
Mhm.
um, having graduated from Clements here in Sugarland, I'm making an assumption that a lot of your friends, were making decisions on their college choices like U of H or A&M or Baylor or Texas. And
Yep.
so what was that conversation like with your friends when you told them you were going to Illinois and away from
Yeah.
college?
So, a lot of them obviously really hadn't, some of them had never been to Illinois. And if they had, it was usually only to Chicago. So a lot of them were like, oh, what is that school kind of known for? Why are you going? Things like that. So a lot of unfamiliarity. That being said, Clements as a high school was pretty strong academically, and still is. So we had a lot of folks who were going into engineering and things like that in college, and those folks, obviously had heard of Illinois, and some of them even, applied and thought about going there as well, just due to the engineering school's kind of reputation. But a lot of my friends were not engineering types, we'll say. So, they were not as familiar. They were, like you said, going, A&M, U of H, Baylor, UT Austin, all those kind of usual suspect schools here in Texas. But it was great. It was cool. Explained to them kind of my roots and my connection to the school already, and they seemed excited, and they're happy for me when I made the decision. So
Well, I do know one thing about leading up to your time in Champaign. You did have an experience with the Houston Illini Club before you went off to Champaign. So tell me about what that experience was like.
yeah. So for those of you listening, the experience Brian's mentioning is I was fortunate enough to receive the Houston Illini annual scholarship that we give out every year to high schoolers going to University of Illinois. So my parents, they're Houston Illini Club members. And for those of you who maybe are listening but haven't joined or haven't gotten super involved yet, really encourage you to do so. It's a really fun group. But my parents heard about the scholarship through the club, and let me know about it. And so once I had decided that I was definitely going to Illinois, I got my application in, got some rec letters in from teachers that I really liked in high school and enjoyed, and was really fortunate to receive the scholarship award that year. And I can say now I chair the scholarship committee, so I kind of lead the efforts to award the scholarship every year. And I can say it's a really competitive endeavor to get into. So I felt very lucky that I was honored with the scholarship that year.
Absolutely, man. We're going to talk about that a little bit more about that later on. But right now, I'm interested in, and I know you're a music guy, big music guy. So when you went off to college here at Illinois, was
Yeah.
that your intended path, is to study music?
Yeah, so I actually started as a vocal performance major in the School of Music at Illinois. So in high school, was really involved in like choir, made all state, did all that stuff. Really enjoyed music, thought that I wanted to do it, and decided to pursue it in college at first. And my thinking then was just, if I didn't pursue it then, I probably never would. So I wanted to kind of give it a go. And so that's where I started at the school.
Follow your dreams, right?
Yeah, it was a great experience too. So, and obviously, I kind of switched back and forth a couple of times, which I'm sure we'll get into a bit too. But the School of Music at Illinois is really, really great.
So I'm interested in, like, what was some of the stuff you got involved in Illinois, and what, music related or not?
Mhm.
And then was it always, within the sort of operatic realm?
Yeah. So for me, one of the reasons I picked Illinois was not just kind of how I felt about it when I went on that visit, but looking more into the school. Obviously, I figured out pretty quickly that it was just excellent, kind of across the board, no matter what academics you were pursuing. So that was a big plus. And then just being a bigger state school, that was something that I really wanted from my college experience. So I had the opportunity to go to some smaller music schools, more kind of conservatory type places. Ultimately, I went with Illinois and kind of the big state school field because I wanted to meet people, in different disciplines and have kind of a really robust experience in college. So when I got there, what I got involved in was things that kind of allowed me to meet people in different areas. So I was in Block I, went to the football games, did Orange Crush, all that fun stuff with the sports. And that was a great time, even though I think the 4 years I was at Illinois are probably the worst 4 years in Illinois athletics history. The 2013 through 2017 were not good years for any of the two major sports at the school.
I got to start talking to some alums that are outside of this era of sports, because it's, that sporting experience wasn't wonderful.
It was dire. It was really bad, but the social group was fun, and it was a fun thing to do. I took a cool trip up with Block I to Soldier Field when the Illini were playing Washington one weekend. We got killed, but it was really fun going up to Soldier Field. So yeah, it was a good experience. And then apart from that, got involved a lot with the School of Music. So there's a lot of social groups in that, and then rehearsals and things like that take up a lot of your time. Also, just there's a lot of homework in music school, which if you had told me before I signed up for it, I wouldn't have believed you. But there is a lot of work to do in music school. So that took a lot of time. And then other than that, it was pretty unstructured, just hanging out with my friends in the dorm, causing trouble in Champaign-Urbana. So.
Okay. I don't know, and forgive me for even asking, but like, what's the homework like for your music classes?
Yeah. So music curriculum is really cool. I actually really enjoyed it. So you kind of have your core music classes, which center around music theory, which is, learning composition techniques, all that good stuff. There's some ear training involved in that too. It's called aural skills, AURAL, aural skills. So that's basically doing like dictation, where they'll play, a small passage of music. Sometimes it's just a melody. Sometimes it's like a 4-part, like little arrangement of something, and you have to listen to it and write down like the notes. And so that's actually really difficult to do. And it's a weird party trick if you don't end up being involved in music as a career later on. Like now it's, I'm a consultant, and so it's kind of useless, but it's also kind of a fun thing to show people that you can do. And then, you take music history classes, things like that. Keyboard. So a lot of there's piano you have to take. For vocalists, we had to take languages. So you had to do 2 semesters of Italian, French, and German. I left before having to do the German one. But I did do Italian and French. You have to take diction classes on top of that language course. So instead of just learning about the actual grammar and stuff, you have to learn the pronunciation, word stresses, things like that. And that class is mixed in with like performing art song and solos from those languages. So like every week you had to bring, one or two songs that you had learned that week, sing it for the class. The professor would kind of assess you on your diction, things like that. So a lot of preparation for those kinds of like impromptu performances in courses. And then the music theory was like, a lot of the homework was like actual like composition assignments where you learned about this era of music, romanticism or whatever. You have to compose like a small choral piece, in that style. And you get graded on like the chord progressions you used and how effectively you navigated those and things like that. So it sounds really like weird and different, but it was fun. It was very challenging.
What happens? I'm curious about the student that is in the major, or I guess in the program, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just doesn't have that ear to translate it from, like, may love music and whatever, but can't put it down on paper. Does that make sense? Does that person really struggle with the completion of the classes?
So, I think like any major, I imagine, people come in with different kind of spikes in their capabilities and skills, right? And so I was very fortunate that the ear training stuff came a little natural to me. That was, I think, a lot due to the fact that one of the hardest things about doing the ear training stuff is when you get into multiple parts at the same time, it's like hearing the other parts that aren't just the melody. Me coming in with my background as a baritone, and singing bass in choirs, I was kind of used to having to not listen to the melody and worry about what I was doing. So it just kind of hit my ear a little more easily than some other folks. My lovely wife, who she'll kill me when she hears this, that I'm saying this, but she's a soprano, like all melody and stuff. The ear training thing was not her strong suit. But that gets better with practice, like anything else. You can really train to figure it out. And what I'll say is, even if folks aren't super great at that one aspect or another aspect of music, to get into the music school, you have to audition and you go through a bunch of tests and things like that. So there's kind of a certain base level of standard that everyone kind of comes in with, I would say. So usually if you're not able to get it right away, it's just something that you have to work a little extra on. And you have professors that are there that help you out and kind of do a really great job of coaching you. So there's ways to work around difficulties.
That makes sense. Yeah. Is there, was there an element or a class like about music business?
So it's funny you say that. There was not, as far as I'm aware, for undergrads, there wasn't. Now, I'll caveat that by saying I switched out of music halfway through my sophomore year. So if there was one later, that might be the case. Mm. I know, so my wife, Nora, she was a grad student at the time. She was getting a master's in vocal performance. They did have a class that was more geared towards not necessarily like music industry related business, but actually like, if you think about a musician and a performer specifically, like you are a business, right? Like you are running your own business when you're out there as a performer. So this was a course led by teachers who, had performing experience, knew what it was like, and really kind of shared tips and tricks that they had used to kind of get through and really took them from all the way from like how to market yourself as a singer, as well as like the really fundamental stuff, like how do you do taxes as basically a full-time independent contractor, what things can be written off for singers that are like things you wouldn't even think about, all this weird stuff. So that's a really valuable thing because a lot of singers don't get that kind of education.
It's so cool how much you can write off as an independent contractor.
It's awesome. Yeah, no, it's awesome. I'm not advocating for tax evasion. That's a crime. Tax avoidance, though, is highly encouraged as long as you go through the legal channels, and write-offs are a great way to do that. So
I think we're all on the same page here.
Yeah.
Okay, so you said you didn't graduate under the music major.
Mm-hmm.
Communications, right?
Yeah.
Where did that? How'd you get it down that track?
Yeah, so about halfway through my sophomore year, kind of towards the end of first semester, I was just kind of in a rut. Like I had a lot of different stuff going on, some like family issues that were going on that were causing like some stress, and then music school, as I mentioned, just like huge time consumption, like lots of work, challenging, really difficult. And I kind of found myself getting burnt out. And so I kind of like lost my love of music. Like I couldn't listen to music outside of class because I was doing so much of it. And like, to me, that was really bad. Right. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want this to feel like, this. And as a younger student, like I wasn't getting cast in the shows and things like that. So I was like, okay, maybe I'm not, good enough to do this. And so there's a lot of like conflicting negative things that kind of came to a head. And so I made the call to, switch to a different major. Spoke to my voice teacher at the time, who's still at the University of Illinois. Her name's Yvonne Redmond. Professor Redmond is fantastic, like favorite teacher ever. She's
Very
wonderful.
Cool. Hope she watches this.
Yeah, I hope she does too. And spoke to her about it. She encouraged me to kind of just figure out what I wanted to do. And she told me, if you leave the major, we'll still let you audition for the operas and, take music classes and things like that. So I was like, okay, that sounds like the kind of best of both worlds. So made the decision to switch out. Then I had to decide what to switch into. First thought was business. I looked into it. The business school didn't accept transfers after their freshman year. So that was a no-go.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
After that, I was kind of like, okay, there's nothing really specific that I know I'm interested in. So let me do communications right now. It's in the College of Liberal Arts. I can take a bunch of different classes and still get a reasonably useful degree. So made that switch into communications. Did music as a minor because I already almost had the minor just from the coursework I'd already done, and went from there.
Knowing that you left the major,
Mm-hmm.
you went back into communications. You could try out for some of the different musicals. Did you make any of them?
I did. So okay. It was really interesting. I actually ended up, after switching my major to communications, I had way more time than I did as a music student. So as a music student, I was taking like 22 credit hours a semester, like a lot of hours. And with music classes, those hours are not reflective of like how much you're in. Like, for instance, the choir course was 1 hour of credit, but we had 6 hours of rehearsal every week. So it was like, it was really crazy.
As a class.
As a class. Yeah. And so communications actually like opened up my time. So I was able to really like pick and choose musically like what I wanted to focus on. So I didn't have to practice keyboarding. I didn't have to, do music theory anymore. I could focus just on technique and my actual singing. And, so started seeing some real improvements that period, and, started auditioning for the operas and started getting cast. So it's funny, I didn't really get cast in any major roles until after I switched out of the School of Music. But then started getting cast pretty consistently in the shows.
The irony.
Yeah, exactly. And that's actually what got me back into my kind of love of music and love of performing, because I was finally getting to do what I wanted to do, not just be in music classes, but actually be on stage and doing that. And I met Nora. We were cast in like 3 operas together while we were in school. And every opera we were we were romantic couples in the opera. So it worked out really, really well. Funny story, the first thing I ever said to Nora, we were cast in an operetta called The Merry Widow. And we were husband and wife in the show. And I didn't know her. I saw her name on the rehearsal sheet that day. And so I went to the opera rehearsal room, and I saw her because I like looked her up, just to know, kind of put a face to a name. And I went up to her and I said, "Hey, I think I'm your husband," just like joking, because we were cast as husband and wife in the show. The first thing I ever said to her. And then, we got married a couple years later. So I wish I could say it had been a planned, smooth first line, but it was very serendipitous.
That was okay. You're an off the cuff guy, and you got it right there. All right. So, well, actually, before we move on, did you explore any other genres of music?
So at school, I was mainly focused on operas and musical theater. So the stuff that we were doing with Lyric Theater at Illinois. I'll say, kind of personally, like I've always really been a big fan of like the old crooners, like Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin. That's kind of what I first started singing when I was a kid and stuff. Like my grandma used to play records and things like that. So I heard that music, really liked it. So that was kind of that's always been like a personal interest of mine. It still is today. But at school, my focus was mainly on the classical stuff. So,
okay. This has nothing to do with the interview.
Yeah.
Top. What's your Mount Rushmore of singers?
Okay, of opera singers, or
I'm not. Just to be honest, I'm not going to know who the opera singers are for that good chance, but just in general.
Oh man, there's just so many singers, and there's so many different genres. I'll go for like, I'll give my opinion on the Mount Rushmore of like jazz singers maybe.
Okay,
So
yeah, that'll work.
Okay, so Ella Fitzgerald's definitely on there. Frank Sinatra's definitely on there. And then I think after that, it's very like subjective and controversial. I think Dean Martin's there. And then the fourth one, who would I put there? Oh man. I like Andy Williams. He's someone you might not know personally, but if you looked up his singing and you'd like recognize the voice in a lot of the songs and stuff. So it's hard to do. I mean, Bing Crosby's like the Christmas album, it's Christmas time that, he comes to mind too. There's just so many good singers. So it's hard to do that.
Wonder if family still gets royalties from that album.
I hope so. That'd be awesome for them.
So what about like today's group of singers? Who are kind of your top?
Pop singers. So I gotta be honest, like I don't listen to a lot of music that's like current. So my like favorite music to listen to aside from jazz is like classic rock from like the 70s and 80s. That's what I grew up listening to with my dad. So I think of bands that I really like Boston and Foreigner, the Eagles. I'm a big fan of the Eagles. So that's kind of my taste in music. It's all down to personal preference though. I think like maybe most unique voices over the years, like Freddie Mercury's obviously like really cool voice. I mean, one of the best singers ever. Aretha Franklin, fantastic singer. There's so many. And then there's guys who aren't necessarily like technically fantastic singers, but you just really like their voice, like John Denver or, Don Headley from the Eagles, so there's a lot of good singers out there.
What I was going to ask the follow-up question from the business class earlier, and I'm interested because really it was because we were talking about potential music business class, but like the way to me, the way that Taylor Swift has kind of handled the whole aspect of music business seems like that would be, I don't know, kind of the new gold standard, or at least a good case study of how musicians can and should potentially handle themselves as a music brand moving forward and a business. So I don't even know if there's a question in there, but said my piece. Anyway, you refound your love in music. You'd met your soon to be wife. You came back to Houston. To pursue music again. Yeah. Okay. At the University of Houston. Talk to me a little about what that experience was like once you got back here.
Yeah. So I decided, I wanted to pursue music and go get a master's in music. And so I auditioned at a bunch of different schools, ultimately decided on U of H. The main reason was the professor I studied with at University of Houston, Hector Vasquez, fantastic singer. I had worked with him a little bit when I was in high school, so I knew that, I really meshed well with his teaching style and things like that. So that was kind of the biggest reason I went in. And the Moore School of Music at U of H is like fantastic, especially for opera. So put on just like huge productions, very similar to kind of Craner Center level kind of a production. So that was a big draw. And then just cost, it was a really cost-effective option. They have really great tuition rates at U of H compared to the music conservatories that I auditioned at, like Juilliard and Mannes and things like that. Those schools are like, it's insanely expensive for a degree that, is likely to not lead to very much financial success. Right. So I was trying to be a little pragmatic as well. And then Houston also, just as a city, like I loved it. Nora had visited a bunch at that time, visiting my family and things like that. She enjoyed it. And cost of living here is great. People are great. Lots of really cool areas to live, great food. So it just, a lot of things, were positive for Houston. So it was cool to make that decision and come back.
All right. So you've graduated from U of H with your master's.
Yeah.
What are you doing next?
Yeah. So While I was at University of Houston, I was doing some performing already, and especially in the summers, I was going to different summer programs and doing operas and things like that. So starting to get out there. When I graduated, basically, I was kind of thinking, okay, I want to pursue this more and perform more professional, in more professional opera productions. So I needed basically a way to fund that and, a way to like get me to, flexibility to travel for auditions and performances and things like that. So I started kind of casting out a pretty wide net on jobs, and landed a job as engagement specialist for an organization called NACD, the National Association of Corporate Directors, specifically working for their branch that kind of covered Houston, Austin, and San Antonio. And I was doing digital marketing and digital communications for them, and helping them kind of set up their events, which were put on for corporate board directors and executives, basically to kind of keep them up to date on like latest trends in good governance, allow them to network and come to events that had really interesting keynote speakers and things like that. Really enjoyed that work. The great thing about it was remote even before COVID, so it was like ahead of its time a little bit, and really gave me a lot of flexibility on timing. So I had a lot of control over my own schedule, and had an understanding with my boss that if I needed to travel for a couple weeks to do a show or an audition, I was able to do that. So that really kind of allowed me to pay my bills and also get out there and audition and sing and perform. So I was there for 2.5 years. It was a really great time. It was me, the executive director, and then one other colleague. So it was a really small team, right. But had a lot of fun. So that's kind of what I did right out of grad school.
And then 21, after that 2.5 years, you had started at McKinsey, as a business analyst.
Yeah.
That seems like a broad terminology.
Yeah.
Talk to me about what that looks like.
Yeah. So, McKinsey Company is a consulting firm. So, specifically, they do management consulting. So we work with corporate executives, board directors, basically helping them solve or diagnose whatever problems that they're having with their business. So that can really run the gamut of, operational improvements, looking at, how to improve leadership styles, really like kind of any and all subject in business, and then across kind of all industries as well. So I, as you mentioned, I got started with them in October of 2021. I had decided at kind of a little bit before then that I was kind of done with music, and Nora and I wanted to have a little bit more of a stable lifestyle and kind of settle down and get a house and start having kids and things like that. So started looking for jobs, ended up finding the job with McKinsey, and have been there ever since. So it's been really cool. Most of my work at the firm has revolved around energy. So both oil and gas and power producing companies, utilities, things like that. And also a lot of sustainability work, which I really enjoy as well.
I love that. You said you're kind of enjoying this path with the oil and gas. What's some of the most interesting stuff you've been able to be a part of?
Yeah. So, the cool thing about consulting is you work on, it's a different project every few weeks or few months, which is really, really cool, and different teams as well. So you're meeting different people that you get to work with, different clients, obviously, as well. So you get to kind of see different styles of running businesses and different size companies, how they have to do things and stuff. So that's really cool. And you learn a lot just from that. In terms of kind of some of the most interesting work I've done, I've worked on some mergers, and that's been really cool to see kind of how that process works, where two companies come together and how, the executive team kind of figures out, okay, how do we take the good parts of both companies and, get rid of the parts that we're not so crazy about, in terms of just like culture and process and things like that. Also figuring out, kind of how to take, best practices from one company and transfer it to another. If one company is, really operationally efficient at their refineries, like what are they doing different, figuring out those things and being able to kind of translate them to the other sites. So that was, I really enjoy mergers. Other things I've done was technology strategy reviews for a big oil and gas client. So they were, energy transition, or kind of in the middle of that, and you hear a lot about that in the news. This particular company had like over a dozen different they called them technology strategies that they had for different things like carbon capture, methane detection, all this stuff, right? And basically they wanted us to come in and kind of standardize the format of their strategies and give them, feedback on like, are these strategies, workable? How would we prioritize going after them based on what they can do and what their current capabilities are? Because you can't do everything at once, right? And that was really interesting as well, because that was my first taste of kind of sustainability work and kind of seeing what the future looks like a little bit. So that was really cool. And it was really cool doing that for a big oil and gas company, because you see the news and you read the papers and you say they tell you that these guys are the bad guys, and in reality, they're the ones that have the engineering expertise and the infrastructure in place to actually make this stuff workable and to really push it forward. So it was really cool to see them really proactive about it, and really neat to be involved in that. So
it's interesting because I like to hear some of those aspects that those companies are putting in the R&D to improve, whether it's energy efficiency or create new jobs or discover what that green space looks like. It's good to hear.
It's great. And, Houston specifically, there was a project I was involved in where I actually co-authored an article that was put out by both McKinsey and the Greater Houston Partnership, which is kind of Houston's Chamber of Commerce, about kind of what Houston needed to do to not only remain the energy capital, but actually take the mantle of being the energy transition capital as well. So we kind of interviewed a bunch of different companies who were involved in Houston, investors kind of all over the world, asking them, what are the advantages Houston has that other places don't have? What excites you about Houston? All this great stuff. So that was really cool too, because I got to, really get a wide net of information and see kind of what makes Houston, and specifically the energy industry here, so special, and get to see kind of the proactive, movement towards, working towards these solutions while also maintaining excellence in traditional, fossil fuel production and things like that. And it was just really, really eye-opening experience and very fun. So.
Well, I hope you get that. I mean, that does sound extremely interesting. Much more fun than the mergers. I've been kind of a part of a merger in a past life, and that was like a nightmare. But
yeah, they can be. There's aspects of mergers obviously that are really not fun, and depending on how the merger is also handled, like it can be a real nightmare for folks working in the company. So we try to help with that to kind of minimize how much that's the case, but it's true.
One of the things that I wanted, and I want to switch gears a little bit, because your involvement in the Houston Illini Club, you've been doing that for a couple of years now, within the scholarship committee. And so can you talk a little bit about that committee and what some of your goals are for that group as we move into the future here?
Yeah, so I am the chair of the Houston Illini Club Scholarship Committee. So it's a 9-person committee right now. And basically what we do is every year we work in the spring. We get a list from the University of Illinois of high school students in the Houston area who have been accepted to Illinois and who have decided and committed to go to the University of Illinois in the fall. And we take that list of incoming freshmen and we invite them to apply for our scholarship each year. And from that, we get, about 6 to 8 applicants at least every year. And they're all fantastic students with lots of different interests and talents, going to Illinois for lots of different reasons. And we invite them to send in applications, and their applications include kind of typical background information, what they're involved in high school, grades, test scores, as well as a couple of essays about, like what they want to do at the University of Illinois and beyond. We also ask them for recommendation letters from teachers that they've had. Basically the committee gathers all that information. I organize it, send it out to the committee, everyone reviews it, and then we select one winner every year to be awarded the scholarship. This year we had a record amount given. So we were able to give out a $3,000 scholarship, which, is awesome and is super exciting to be able to increase that amount. And, that scholarship amount comes all from donations to the Illini Club. So, if you go to events and there are raffles, or if there's a ticket price you have to pay for something, usually at least a portion of the ticket price will go to the scholarship fund. Raffles, usually all of it goes to the scholarship fund. Also just you can make donations, cut checks to us, and it all goes there. And from that amount, we're able to figure out kind of what we can give as a club to a student every year. So our hope is to grow that amount and to continue growing that amount. And also to, potentially, be able to award more, but also maybe award multiple awards if possible, to deserving students. Because it's really hard to parse through all the applications and pick just one kid, because they're all really fantastic students.
Yeah, and we talked about how tuition keeps going up.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
It feels funny because $3,000, I mean, that's a lot of money. But when you think about it compared to tuition, you're like, oh, it's just a drop in the bucket. But, we do what we can, and every bit helps. And I can say as a past recipient, it was, very much appreciated and very helpful to me as a student at Illinois to, pay for books and things like school. Just the school expenses are ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, as much as folks can give, it all goes to a really great cause and goes to a really talented student, and really helps them out. It means a lot. So,
Okay, so I didn't know that you received a list of all the attendees, I guess, coming into the school.
yep.
Um, roughly how many people is that each year?
So I would say it's probably about 20 to 30 students each year from the Houston area.
Okay.
30 is probably the high end. I think it's probably around 20 or so. And they come really from every part of the Houston area. So we get them from the Woodlands, East Houston, down in Sugar Land, all the areas are covered. So it's pretty cool to see that range of people that are interested in Illinois.
All right. So at this juncture of the interview, I'm usually talking about what would somebody that is, or what would you tell someone who's graduating from the University of Illinois and coming here to Houston, essentially trying to sell Houston as an opportunity? But I'm going to do this in reverse here a little bit, just based on your situation as a graduating high school senior from Houston, went to Illinois. What are you telling a high school senior who's now potentially making their college choice? There's 1,000 universities down here,
Yeah.
colleges and good schools. But what are you saying to somebody that's maybe considering U of I?
Yeah. So for me, the things that really were appealing to me was the school is really excellent academically, kind of across every discipline. So it really doesn't matter what you're studying, whether it's business or, STEM or, music, it's really a fantastic institution. It's really cool to just be on campus with, professors who are Nobel laureates and, have been published in the New York Times or Wall Street Journal, things like that, and that's really neat. The students that you're going to be in school with at Illinois are also just stellar. Like, you don't have to worry about, that project where you're the one doing all the work. Everyone's like very competent and, wants to be there to learn and to improve. And so it's a really cool environment. I think it's a really good mix of academically strong, but also being really fun. Like, at the end of the day, it's a Big Ten state school. I was telling you the sports when I was there were horrible. The football and basketball team were bad when I was there from 2013 to 2017. But we still had just a ton of fun, and, your friends in the dorms are a blast. So that was really cool as well. I also really liked the fact, coming from Texas, that there weren't a lot of people that I think there was one other kid from my high school that went to Illinois in my graduating class. And that was kind of appealing for me because I wanted an experience of meeting different people, meeting people from different backgrounds. The Midwest is very different from Texas.
Oh, for sure.
And, in good and bad ways. And so it's really cool. Like, college should be about experiencing as much of those differences as you can, and getting kind of involved with people, who you might not have been involved with in the past. And I think Illinois is just a really cool place to do that. And it's an incredibly diverse student body. So just lots of really great things. I loved my 4 years there.
Well, this is, and I know you kind of already made your personal plug for the Houston Illini Club.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else that you wanted to talk about today?
I would just encourage folks, if you're an Illini alum in the Houston area and you haven't joined the Illini Club, it's free to join. So I would do that. That's step one. Step two is come to events. The game watches are really fun. There's a lot of non-sports related stuff that the club does if you're not into that. So just get involved. It's a really great group. Like, every person that I've met at the Illini Club is just really wonderful. We all do different things around Houston, and we live in different areas. So there's definitely, there are people for you, and it's always great to run into Illini, and really, really excellent to kind of get a group of us together. It's always a really fun time when we get together. So I would encourage you to get involved and come join us sometime.
Absolutely. And the next game watch party Saturday.
Yep.
Men's basketball takes on Tennessee. Game watch at 11 o'clock. Tom's Watch Bar downtown.
Yeah. And we've got momentum. We took out FAU. That was a good team. That was a really good game. I don't know if you saw it. It was a stellar game. It was awesome. I'm actually really excited for this team this year. I think it's going to be a good group.
The fact that we had two 30-point scorers with their career highs in the same game against Final Four team from last year who didn't lose anybody.
Yep.
Mind you, like that says a lot. And
yep.
With the other stat being that this Illini team has won more Big Ten games than any other Big Ten team in the last 5 years. We're on track. We're moving. For as much criticism as Coach Underwood takes at times, this program is back.
I agree. I mean, I think so. They hired him right after I left, so I think it was probably me. We had Coach Gross when I was there, and then we got Underwood right away. And I was like, oh man, where was this? It's really fun to kind of follow them the last few years. They've been amazing, turning out players who are doing well in the NBA, like Io, and it's great to see, because it's how things should be at Illinois. The basketball team should be good.
All right, guys. So I encourage you to visit HoustonIlliniClub.com for all the event and watch party information, as well as getting your dues-free membership, as David mentioned a while ago. Follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, now on YouTube, and we are all working collectively on some really new and cool things into the future. So watch out for some of those announcements on those. So no matter how you got here to Houston, our goal for this show is to feature our unique stories of incredible Illinois alumni members, their passions, and their really cool undertakings as they pursue a remarkable life here in Houston. So thank you, David, for joining us here on the Houston Illini Club 3-in-1 show. And join us again next time. ILL.
I. Thanks for having me, Brian. It was a blast.
Awesome.